Welcome to Channel 6 TV Community Focus, and I'm Dennis George. There's a lot of interesting people in our community, and none more interesting than our guest here today. Jean Garett is in her 50th year at Glasscock Elementary, and welcome over, and glad to have you with us today.
Thank you for calling.
Well, you know, at most people, when they get to be 50 years of age, they're thinking about retirement. And a lot of kids today may have 50 jobs in 50 years. You stayed in this one job for that amount of time and still going strong. Did you ever think back in about 1966 you would still be doing this 50 years later?
Never. They would each year, of course, people would say, are you going to stay? And I'd say yes. And at that time, we didn't have retirement. So I said, well, I'm not going to stay that long. No need of me taking out retirement. And then just kept the next year. And then eventually they just kept counting up. And still, it's been fabulous.
Okay, and you were telling me that you and your late husband, Orville, neither one of you were from here, and I guess his job with the Hobbs store brought you to Lebanon. Where did you all come from?
Whitesburg, Kentucky, which is Letcher County. Most people know it's near Hazard,
right, because
it's not very well known. Letcher County is not. We lived at the foot of Pine Mountain, and we both worked at Hobbs, went to school together, and we started at 14. And we thought we were rich because we were making about 45 cents an hour. You know how you start out early. But after I got to working at school, it really wasn't a job anymore. It was like a friendship. The teachers and all my principals have just really made my life worthwhile.
All right, let's go back, and some of these names are not going to be familiar to many of our viewers. Mm-hmm. And I guess your first principal was
Ples Begley.
I was going. That name was in my mind, but I was afraid there might have been others.
Yes,
he was there. Then let's go through. What do you remember about Mr. Begley?
Mr. Begley was he's the one who hired me, of course, and I was the first secretary hired in elementary school. And Mr. Begley was laid back. He was a good disciplinarian, but he'd also was a gentle person because he loved the kids and tried to talk them out of things more than he would use a paddle. Of course, we used paddle back then. And our offices were little bitty holes in the wall at that time, and so he was just a special person to me. He was a good friend, and he, as I said, hired me that in '66.
All right. Who replaced Mr. Begley?
Barry Benningfield.
Okay, so he was probably there. Did you work with him as long as you have anyone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Barry was a wonderful person. He very good disciplinarian. I guess I keep saying disciplinarian because I think that at that time, times were different, quite different, and they disciplined with the paddle, of course. But Barry was, he loved education, and of course our new library is named after Barry because he encouraged reading and the students to read and read. That was one of the things in order to advance their education, and he became a really good friend and confidant. We talked with each other about things that we couldn't talk to other people about sometimes, and it was good to have a good friend.
So your relationship with your principals has been more than they were your boss or whatever.
Yes.
They become your close friends because you worked with them very closely.
Yes.
All right, and over the years, you've seen a lot of changes in the education field. I mean, back then you said your offices were a hole in the wall, and you and Ms. Schlosser, before we came on, were talking about the way you wrote things in books years ago, but no computers or anything. Right. Obviously, you've adapted pretty well to all that.
Well, at the time, of course, I was doing bookkeeping and secretary both at the same time, and attendance. And as I was showing her, I have the old bird book. That's what most of your old teachers would know what the bird book is, that they had to write in pencil and make it total out at the end of the month. And then we turned in a sheet from this. So we have advanced to computers now.
Okay.
And,
well, so obviously you've kept up with technology to be able to do
Yes.
all that stuff. And you
Yes.
think, you know, we hear the older generation is scared of computers. They don't know what to do. But obviously, you've grasped it quite well and run with it.
well, I enjoy the computer if it's something that I know how to do. You know, I'm still a little scared too. To see these kids that just go in there and they don't think anything about it, but I'm always afraid I'm going to make a mistake or something. But I have had training, and they have it over here at the office for us to bring us up to date on everything. And I'm starting a new bookkeeping program right now, and it's scaring me, but I've almost mastered it. Lisa helps a lot.
All right. Are there teachers, I'm sure you've come across teachers at your school who used to be your students as you've gone through? Have you had any of that, or do you see students who become parents and grandparents of students?
Yes.
That has to be kind of interesting.
Quite often. But the thing that with me, I can remember faces, but I can't always remember names. And they'll say, "You do remember me, don't you, Miss Garett?" And I'd say, "No, I'm afraid I don't, because I'm afraid to call them a name, and it might not be that person." But as I said, they've been lots of them come back now.
Well, do you ever tell story if you see one of the old students with their child? Do you ever get to go back and tell stories to their kids about that? Or?
Well, usually they will tell them. They will say, "No, Miss Garett was here when I started, and I visited Mr. Begley or Mr. Benningfield's office quite often. She remembers me coming in here. How many times did I come in here?" But some of them do that, and then just others that I'll see in town or something and remember them. And a lot of our kids just sort of rotate because they don't move that much.
You have to be able to take a lot of pride. I know teachers do. I know coaches do. When you see a student who graduates from high school, college, and have done well in life, you have to take a lot of pride, you know, because in that yourself, in that you were with those kids when they got started.
Yeah, it's a really nice thing to see a lot of them go on, and then of course you hear negative parts of a lot of them too, which is not good. But it's a special blessing when a child gets an education, I think, for anyone, parents or any teacher that was involved with them. But I'd keep up with some of them. I don't all of them, but it is good to know that they did complete their education, some of them.
Now, do you ever walk through the halls of Glasscock, and when they have the graduating class of 1963 and 64, do you go back in time and look at those pictures and try to remember some of the kids? And I'm sure there's a lot of memories in those hallways for you.
I have many times, and they're not in the hallways anymore.
Is that right?
We had some leaks and damaged some of our pictures, so they're now in the library. And they're all hanging across the back of the wall of the library. And we have many people come in and want to look at them, and a lot of them want to take them out, of course, and not leave them in there.
They wanted to save it for themselves, or they didn't want anybody to see them?
Didn't want anybody to see it, I think. But it's really been a place that most people love to go back and look at. And then after a few years, we quit doing the single pictures and just did group pictures. And my daughter helped me put names on them for each child, and we have those filed in a box.
Well, you know, I always found it interesting to go through and see the individual pictures.
Yeah.
And years later, oh, I remember him, and I remember him. Boy, he doesn't look like that anymore.
No,
And you see a lot of that. How was it with your children went to Glasscock when you were there?
No, they went to Lebanon Elementary.
Okay, so they didn't have to put up with Mama, and you didn't learn everything about it.
I volunteered down there some, and then I started out in remedial reading down there. And then when they moved them back, they called it the little White House out back, that I worked out there a few months, and then Mr. Begley moved me in. But no, they went to Lebanon Elementary all the time.
So they were probably glad of that in some ways, weren't they?
Well, it was good for them. Of course, I had a grandson come through here. And
you have had a grandson come through?
Yeah.
Oh, I bet he enjoyed that.
Well, he had everybody calling me Mama Jean.
Is that right?
Or Granny Jean. And of course, I've been Mama Jean or Granny Jean to most of them. I think when you got children in it, you try to step back a little bit and let them do their thing and not try to push it on them. You know, let them do it how they want to.
Well, but you've been such a fixture there that you are probably a mother and grandmother to the whole school on occasion.
I hope so. And the teachers have just been so good, and we're like a family more or less. Probably some of my family is mostly gone now, but I probably know more about some of them, and they know more about me than a lot of people do.
All right, but as you've had new principals come in and young people maybe who weren't familiar with the history of Glasscock, or how do we do things here, or where is this, where is that, you've probably been a very important to some of those people coming in, just to kind of give them the lay of the land.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they've leaned on you for some things.
Well, I've got, let's see, 2 up here now in the central office that worked with me in the front office. And they were, I guess, good enough to travel on, and I stayed there. But it's just good being there. And with the teachers, as I said, we're a group of, a family group. And I think even back, I look back many, many years ago who I was teaching, and I think, I'm not sure if maybe Virginia Clark is about the only teacher still living
Is that right?
that I started with. Well, Dorothy Netherland.
Right.
And David Farrell, but they were farther up in the years. But the principals, they've been very wonderful, and they've accepted any kind of help I could give them, and they've just been wonderful to me.
Well, when they step in, even if you've been a principal or a teacher in another school, when you go to a different environment,
Yeah.
you know, they're not sure of things. And I guess that's where you became Mama G or Granny G, even to those people, to kind of, you know, work them along.
Well, most of them are so much younger. But Miss Devine, I guess, she was one after Barry, and she was a great person, and I just love her, and she's still a good friend, and we do things together sometimes. And then, of course, Miss Brogel was only there for a year and a half, and she got thrown into a lot of things that she wasn't ready for, I think, but she did her best on that and tried to bring up our test, and they did come up a little bit, but not enough for all of us to really be that proud of, but the kids did try. And Miss Akers, I think she's going to do wonderful. She's interested in kids, has kids of her own there, and she's trying really hard, I think.
So they asked you years ago, are you going to be back next year? So I guess the question we have to ask you is, are you going to be back again next year, or is that we'll see at the end of this year?
Well, I'm not sure. I keep saying that, and I've keep saying that for 50 years almost, but I was going to quit this year, but after Miss Akers came in, I thought I should stay and maybe get her started going, and then got such nice comments from Miss Losher that I don't know, Dale. I think I may try another one, but I'm not going to say that for certain.
Well, you're at a point where you can decide, but
yeah.
when you want to go out. But do you have other things on a bucket list that you want to do?
Well, I've done some of them already.
Is that right?
Yes. Of course, my girls keep me young, I guess. We go places together and trips, and we just got back from Gulf Shores, and we had a good time there. And Karen and Kim both are sort of like clowns together. They keep you entertained, and so.
Now, they get that from you, or did they get that from Orville? Well,
I like to kid and joke, and that's, I guess, part of it from me. Maybe some from both.
Okay.
But yes, we enjoy being together. And then, as I said, I think the students keep you young. All these little ones coming in, they're so cute. You'd like to take a bunch of them home. But
well, along that, do you see a big difference in kids today as you did 50 years ago?
Oh.
Or what's the?
Oh, I hate to say anything much on that level, but
it's different.
I think the kids rule the parents now more than when we misbehaved. We knew that we was headed for another switch at home, but I think the kids do control their parents a lot more now and do a lot of things that they enjoy doing. or saying no to a parent. That always, we just had a training on how to react to people, and I guess that's one thing that really sets me off when a child is disrespectful to their parents and the parents take it. That bothers me too.
Well, you mentioned several times with Mr. Begley and Mr. Benningfield about disciplinarian and paddle, and some say that the elimination of the paddling changed discipline in the schools as well.
Well, I think it did in the schools, but I think a lot of that should be done at home. If a parent disciplines their child at home, it's not going to have discipline at school. But I know most parents think that they turn them over to us and we're supposed to teach them manners and discipline and all that. But the teacher nowadays has so much paperwork and things that they've got to do that it's hard to do that. And you can't do that if the parent doesn't support.
Well, and as you said, you knew if you got in trouble at school, there was going to be heck to pay when you got home, because it was going to be a lot worse.
Yes.
No questions asked either.
That's right.
You know.
And they seemed to know it before you got home. I don't know how. But
the secretary wasn't calling and telling, was it?
Don't think so.
Okay.
She might have been. I don't know.
Well, hopefully 50 years from now, someone else will be in this seat interviewing you, and that you will have finished 100 years over at Glasscock.
Oh, I don't think that.
They won't have. Well, whether or not you come back another year, I know people at the school and the community appreciate what you've done over there, and just congratulations on what you've done.
Thank you so much, Dennis.
Thank you very much. And for Channel 6 TV Community Focus, I'm Dennis George.